The SATs had just wrapped up when I was grabbed by a horror game and forced to be a player. I figured I'd be dead on arrival, but it turned out to be an exam-themed level, and I was the fastest one to finish. The proctor, who had already taken out 3 other players, just stared at my test, speechless. The veteran players, who were stressing out of their minds over the questions, were suddenly all begging for my help. The final boss, a supposed genius, made his grand entrance. The livestream chat was convinced a bookworm like me was toast this time. But when the boss turned around, I had to laugh. Well, if it isn't the guy who spent 3 years as my perennial runner-up. My SAT scores had just come out, and as the top scorer, I was in the middle of an interview. Everything was going fine until a wave of dizziness hit, and suddenly I was back in an exam room. Welcome to the 7th day instance. Player count 30. Clear condition. Players must do everything in their power to pass the college entrance exams. Please follow the rules. We wish all players an enjoyable game. My homeroom teacher always said to use every single minute in an exam. Having just finished the real SATs, I was still in that mindset. I instinctively started looking over the scratch paper and answer sheet on the desk. I didn't notice how familiar this classroom was. A pot-bellied man stood up. Are you kidding me? I haven't been in school for years, and you pull this crap on me. The next second, the man's entire head detached from his body as if severed by an invisible wire. Everyone fell silent in shock. Blood sprayed from his neck, splashing all over the face of a girl in the front row. Ah! The girl let out an unstoppable scream, which was cut short as her own head was severed. Fear spread through the room in an instant. Several people nearby clamped their hands over their mouths, tears streaming down their faces. A system notification exploded in my mind. Player count 28. The proctor stood at the front of the class, completely still, a faint smile on his face. The rest of us were frozen like statues. The student handbook in my hand crumpled under my fingertips. The rules were written in stark black and white. During the prep period, candidates must not move around and must remain quiet. Keep your admission ticket safe. It is your sole proof of identity, and you may only answer the test under this identity. During the exam, you must not be caught cheating or copying by the proctor. When the exam is over, please stop writing immediately. The campus broadcast crackled to life. Attention all candidates. The exam will now officially begin. It seemed I had ended up in a place where one wrong move could cost me my life. Survive, I told myself. The classroom was dead silent. For most of these people, the SATs were a distant memory. Complex concepts had become unreadable symbols. Even if they wanted to write something, they had no idea where to start. Only a few of us, myself included, picked up our pens. Most were still in shock, too scared to move or speak, just sitting there frozen. Just then the proctor moved. He slowly walked toward the first row, smiling at the first student. Why aren't you writing? His chilling smile felt like a physical wave of cold. The boy stammered, I haven't figured it out yet. Crack. Like a watermelon splitting open, the boy's head shattered into pieces. In a flash, he slumped over in his seat. Everyone swallowed hard, forcing back their terror. Trembling, they all grabbed their pens and started scribbling nonsense, not caring what it was. The proctor continued to the second row. The girl in the second row still had the first boy's blood splattered on her face. She was shaking like a leaf, scrawling gibberish on her paper. The proctor stopped beside her. After a few seconds, the girl was shaking too hard to write and couldn't stop herself from sobbing. Please. Before she could finish her sentence, snap. She slumped over in her seat too. Everyone's pens froze. No one dared to write randomly anymore, cautiously choosing to fill in only what they were sure about. No one knew if she had died just for scribbling nonsense. The third row was me. I was busy analyzing the test. It was a comprehensive exam, so it looked like there was only one part. Classical literature analysis, set theory, conservation of kinetic energy, balancing equations. Easy. My eyes lit up. This was all free points. I was so engrossed in answering that I didn't even notice the proctor had been standing beside me for a long time. The others held their breath, waiting nervously. Not bad, the cold proctor grunted, then continued walking down the aisle. I had survived. I was the first person so far to survive a direct encounter with the proctor. Seeing my half-finished test, a few people around me shot me jealous looks. The proctor paced back and forth through the classroom. I was at my desk, writing furiously. Thwop. A small paper wad hit me square in the forehead. I looked up. The three people next to me were staring at me, like I was an oasis in a desert. Their mouths weren't moving, but their voices echoed in my head. It had to be some kind of supernatural item. The big bald guy, Tank, rolled up his sleeves, showing off a set of brawny muscles. He whispered, "Yo sis, let me copy. Anyone messes with you later, I'll take him out." The guy with bleached hair, Spike, leaned back in his chair with a smirk. "Help me, and I'll make sure you clear the next levels." The cool older chick, Raven, had a silver whip coiled around her arm. "I'll owe you one." Good outside this instance, too. I remembered sizing everyone up when we first arrived. These three had been remarkably calm, a stark contrast to the confusion of everyone else. They only started getting anxious after the first player died, and they saw the test paper. They were veteran players. I understood immediately. Without a word, I shifted my test paper so they could see most of it. The exam time ticked by. A few more people died for breaking the rules along the way. By the time the exam was almost over, there were only 20 of us left. The broadcast announced, 10 minutes remaining. Please prepare to turn in your exams. 5 minutes remaining. Please prepare to turn in your exams. The exam has ended. Everyone had learned their lesson this time and put their pens down early, just as the rules required. The proctor started collecting the papers. Everything seemed to be proceeding smoothly, but something was wrong. The proctor had collected the last paper and returned to the front of the room. Theoretically, the SATs were over. We should have cleared the level. But the next second, rain started pouring down, and thunder boomed. A gray shadow flashed past the window. Thud. The sound of a heavy object hitting the ground. Screams erupted from downstairs. Someone jumped. And in that instant, I understood. If you can't pass the SATs, you can't clear the level. I lowered my eyes. The others in the classroom were still basking in the joy of survival. The human eye blinks in 0, 2 seconds. In the time it took to blink and open my eyes again, the noisy crowd below seemed to have been silenced, the pouring rain muted, the sticky red blood vanished, and the classroom was as clean as it was at the beginning. The change was so sudden and swift that, by any normal perception, it was unnoticeable. A boy with glasses in the front row stood up, trembling. "It's finally over. I want to go home." And then his head, too, rolled onto the floor as if it had hit an invisible wire. Player count 19. The relaxed atmosphere in the room instantly froze. "Russell." The proctor pulled the tests out of the sealed bag. He casually tossed the papers into the air, and they fluttered down onto each of our desks. The campus broadcast crackled. "Attention all candidates. The exam will now officially begin." No one picked up their pen. The classroom was as silent as a deep mountain forest at midnight. Someone trembled and looked back, only to discover. The clock on the classroom wall once again pointed to 8 o'clock. The second loop began, and the air in the classroom felt stagnant. Everyone was trying to figure out why we hadn't cleared the level. Others might have wondered if their scores weren't high enough to pass, but I knew the score wasn't the point. I was 100% certain I had gotten a perfect score. I didn't pick up my pen. The proctor's coming down, start writing. Tank looked back at me, his voice echoing in my head again. In the silence, the sound of a pen being thrown down was jarringly loud. A man 2 rows behind me stood up. "Listen up, I'm a veteran player. This instance isn't meant to be cleared by taking a test. There's no way we can do these damn questions. We'll just be stuck in this loop forever. There has to be a way to clear this level. That proctor must be the Wraith Lord. If we all work together and take him out, we can pass." The proctor didn't move. The man, who the others called Cole, continued his speech, showing off the items he'd gotten from clearing previous instances. A few guys had already surrounded the proctor. The youngest one raised a magical iron hammer. But just as the hammer was about to smash into the proctor's head, the proctor moved. He raised his hand and made a gun gesture. Bang! The young man with the hammer's head exploded. Bang! 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 The others were taken out instantly by the proctor in the ensuing fight. Player count: 15 in the end. Only 2 were left standing. One was the proctor. The other was Cole, the veteran player who had rallied everyone in the first place. Cole hadn't lifted a finger the entire time. He never even got close to the proctor. He backed away step by step, surrounded by the bodies of those who had fought for him. He put away his items and, under the proctor's strange smile, sat back down. The classroom was deathly silent. The exam was a dead end. Violence didn't work. Of the 30 players who started, half were now dead. The instance seemed to be a total stalemate. Tank and the others looked grim. Cole was silent, his expression dark. Some people in the classroom started to cry in despair. The next second, I stood up. In the stream chat I couldn't see, the comments exploded. Is this new player insane? Didn't she just see those guys get insta-killed even with items? This proctor is the strongest elite mob I've ever seen. This is not something a newbie can handle. An SSS Plus instance is no joke. This girl is so unlucky, getting thrown into such a high difficulty instance right off the bat. She seemed pretty calm at the start. I thought she might last a while. Didn't expect her to have a death wish. Man, this is boring. Is this gonna be another party wipe? 90% of the teams in the 7th day instance get wiped on the second loop. Who the hell designed something this hard? Kid, don't do anything rash. You can't beat him. Let's think of another way. Easy there, little lady. Calm down. The voices of Tank, Spike, and Raven echoed in my head, one after another. Humph, looking for death. The veteran player, Cole, sneered from the back row. I ignored them and walked straight toward the proctor. My face was impassive as I walked through the sea of bodies and blood. The floor was sticky beneath my feet, but I didn't seem to notice. Standing in front of the proctor, I realized he was unusually tall. His pale, stiff face looked incredibly eerie. I tried to act like a normal student asking for permission. Excuse me, teacher. I need to use the restroom. The proctor stared at me. Everyone in the classroom was staring at me. After a moment, the proctor nodded. Everyone was dumbfounded. Wait, what? She just walked out? That's not right. Weren't we told not to talk or move? How is she completely unharmed? As someone who watched last season, I can finally speak up. This is the correct move. I pulled the classroom door open. All eyes on me. I thought for a moment, then decided to speak up. First, you can't answer this test. A name is already written on the paper. The name Liam was written on the edge of everyone's test. And the rules said you could only answer under your own identity. Most people, after one loop, wouldn't have noticed that. Second, you can't talk or move before the exam starts. During the exam you can. And you have to be back in your seat 10 minutes before it ends. When Cole led the others to attack the proctor only fought back when attacked. He didn't instantly kill them for moving, like he did during the exam itself. Third, the condition is to pass the SATs. But there's no official passing score. The score isn't the point. The point is to use the exam time to find clues about the Wraith Lord. I didn't have a concept of these instances, but Cole's words had sparked an idea. Fourth, the proctor isn't the Wraith Lord. Liam probably is. We need to find him. He's most likely the person who jumped from the roof at the end of the loop. He's probably on the rooftop right now. That last part was pure speculation, but it was worth a shot. This is all just my theory. Believe it or not, that's up to you. But I looked at the proctor, my gaze sharp. I am going to survive. In just a few minutes, the tone of the stream chat had completely shifted. Whoa, I thought she was asking for it, but she's actually got some serious game. She figured all that out after just one loop. I think last season's winner took 2 loops before making a move. The god tier player Luke also figured it out in one, but he spent the second loop just observing. I don't know if this girl is reckless or just bold, but she's got guts. Jumps right into action. You're damn lucky to be in the same instance as her. Normally this loop is a total party wipe. Now that she's shaken things up, I bet a lot more people will realize they shouldn't be answering the test. Probably just a blind squirrel finding a nut. I don't believe a young girl has that kind of ability. Besides, being smart isn't enough in this instance. The scariest thing is always other people. I agree with the user above. Pride comes before a fall. I've seen too many people get taken out for sticking their necks out. Did anyone else notice Tank is here? LMAO, he still looks like he has rocks for brains. The look on his face when he first saw the test was priceless. I'm dying, ha 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 ha. I had realized early on that this instance was set in my old high school. And the name Liam. It couldn't be him, could it? If the loop reset with this person's suicide, he would definitely go to the rooftop. The windows in every classroom of our high school could only be opened a crack. I decided to head to the roof and wait for him. I didn't notice a dark figure silently following me. I thought she was the next big thing, but wow, she's so weak. Is that her running speed? A turtle with a pulled hamstring could move faster than that. It's like all of Ava's skill points went into her brain. The way her limbs are coordinating when she runs looks like a T-Rex in a body cast trying to jump rope. A sea cucumber doing street dance, a marionette doing Tai Chi. Thank you, madam, for that hilarious performance. Let's bring our next contestant to the stage. I was eaten by a monster, and then rescued by Tank, Spike, and the others. As I pulled the sticky saliva off my clothes, I thought maybe dying would have been better. Raven coolly remarked, "You can't even handle a level 1 mob, and you dared to come out here alone looking for death?" Nearby, Tank was still kicking the disemboweled monster. "You mess with my brain. You mess with my brain." Tank and the others quickly filled me in on what happened after I left. A few people didn't believe what I said and decided to stay behind and keep working on the test. The 3 of them, along with Cole and a few other players, decided to come out and try their luck. From their explanation, I learned more about this world of instances. Instances were formed from the lingering resentment of the dead, which is why there's a wraith lord. There are 2 ways to clear an instance. The first is brute force. Find the wraith lord and kill it directly. This requires a high combat power. The second is puzzle solving. Gather clues, avoid the penalty rules, and finally figure out the cause of the wraith lord's death to gain its acknowledgement and clear the instance peacefully. Although puzzle solving gives better and rarer rewards, most people still choose brute force. Because getting the wraith lord's acknowledgement is incredibly difficult. People who die filled with resentment usually just want more people to die with them. If not for the system's mandatory success paths, their instances might not have any way out at all. Before they rescued me, another group had already gone to the rooftop. But the rooftop door was locked and couldn't be forced open, so they had gone ahead to the security office to get the key. There was 1 hour left until the end of the exam. We hurried to the security office. The security office was on the first floor. The school hallways and the SAT classroom felt like 2 different dimensions. The exam was confined to that single classroom, but the rest of the school felt like a normal high school day. We started seeing some students and teachers in the hallways, but most of them were in tattered, blood-stained clothes. Some had half their heads smashed in. Others had their intestines dragging on the floor. The floors and walls were covered in dark red blood, and figures shuffled through the halls like zombies. A few players were gathered in front of the security office. "Hey, old-timer, can we borrow the key to the roof?" "Yeah, Pops, just let us borrow it for a sec. We'll bring it right back." The old man was wearing a uniform, but he had horns growing out of his head. His monstrous face showed his impatience. No, scram. One person tried to snatch the key. The bull-headed old man waved his hand, and the person's arm was cleanly severed at the shoulder. Blood gushed out, and he writhed on the floor in agony. The others didn't dare to move closer. But the more I looked at the old man, the more familiar he seemed. "Mr. Chung?" During my senior year, my mom often came to school to bring me extra meals to keep my nutrition up. I got to know Mr. Chung pretty well, and would sometimes bring him a bottle of cold water. He was always nice to me too. Sometimes if I couldn't make it down to get my food, he'd find someone heading my way to bring it up to me. I never expected to see a familiar face in an instance. The old man, who had just dismembered a player, instantly broke into a kind smile. "Ava, is your uncle coming to pick you up today?" "Uncle?" I paused. "I don't have an uncle." The old man continued talking to himself. "Sai, you used to have such good grades. You were the top contender for valedictorian at our school. What a shame." And then that whole thing happened. For the first time since entering the instance, I was truly confused. Mr. Chung was talking as if I were someone else, yet he clearly recognized me. The other players started looking at me with suspicion. Someone spoke up, "Who are you really? Why does an NPC in this instance know you?" "Yeah, what's going on? She's been weird from the start. Could she be a spy for the instance? Planted here to get us all killed." Cole hung back behind the crowd, his face unreadable. My head was spinning. This place was so familiar, but why was the me Mr. Chung was talking about a completely different person? Perhaps only the Wraith Lord of this instance could answer that. No matter what, I had to survive first. The next step was to get to the rooftop and meet this Wraith Lord. I played along with Mr. Cheng's story. "Yes, my uncle will be here soon. Sir, the dean asked me to open the rooftop door. Some workers are coming to hang a banner, and it's pretty urgent. Could I get the key first?" The old man beamed at me. "Take it, but remember to bring it back down later." I took the key and asked casually, "By the way, sir, have you seen Liam?" The old man's expression changed instantly. Why bring up someone like him? He's a disgrace to this school. If it weren't for him, they wouldn't have had to change the exam paper this year. I nodded. Inside, I felt even stranger. How could I have absolutely no memory of someone so infamous? 30 minutes left until the end of the exam. The academic building had 6 floors, and our exam room was on the 5th. Our group headed for the rooftop. We never expected to be ambushed by our own people halfway there. Cole and his group charged out from the side. A machete was an inch from my face when Tank blocked it. My soul just about left my body. "Cole, are you insane?" Tank roared. Cole glared back at Tank, not backing down. "Tank, you've always been thick-headed. Don't say I didn't warn you. This girl, she's the Wraith Lord of this instance. Not only does she know the instance inside and out, she even knows the NPCs. It has to be her. Kill her, and we can clear the level." Tank froze for a second, then cursed. "Are you out of your mind? If she's the Wraith Lord, why would she give us clues?" Cole sneered. "It's a setup, to make our deaths even more miserable." I thought about how, out of a moment of pity, I had shared all my deductions before leaving the classroom. Now it was being used against me. Tank scratched his head, glanced at me as if confirming something, then turned back to yell, "With those damn questions, if she hadn't told us not to answer, we'd all be dead in there. Why would she go to all that trouble? I don't believe she's the Wraith Lord." Cole eyed Tank coldly. Better to kill the wrong person than to let one slip by. "Tank, are you really choosing her side?" Even though Cole's a veteran player, he falls into these logical traps way too easily. Better to kill the wrong person than let one go. Here we go again with the player-on-player drama. It's like a classic feature of these instances. Trust levels at 0. These people are ridiculous. They're only alive because of Ava, and now they're turning on her. Tank's brain is actually working this time. Guess that's why he's a top-tier player. But the other side has more people, more power, and they all have items to save their skins. This is a tough fight. Maybe they should just hand Ava over. We already have the general gist of the instance anyway. Tank didn't move. 4 or 5 people stepped up beside Cole. "Then don't blame us for outnumbering you." Raven pulled me behind her. "Don't look, kid. It's too bloody." I stood behind Tank, Spike, and Raven. Cole's gaze swept over them. "Tank, Spike, Raven, fine. So you're all helping her? Even the best of us make mistakes." The other side had the numbers. Tank loosened his wrists, Spike gave a cold smirk, and Raven drew her whip. The two sides faced off, ready to clash at any moment. I slammed open the hallway window. Through the small opening, I yelled outside, "There's a fight. Dean, come quick." Everyone fell silent. Cole looked at me like I was an idiot. But I knew that the dean of discipline at our high school, a bald man, hated student fights more than anything. If you broke that rule, getting your parents called was the least of your worries. He had a whole arsenal of nasty punishments. In the world of the instance, that probably meant Cole and his crew were in for a world of hurt. A few seconds later, a tall, imposing shadow appeared instantly. Its voice was deep and resonant. "Who's fighting? Don't you want to graduate?" Everyone was stunned. Someone actually came? I immediately put on my best student act. "Hello, Dean. I'm Ava from class 3-3. We were heading back to class when these guys suddenly appeared and tried to get money from us. When we said no, they threatened to beat us up. I held up Tank's arm, which had been injured blocking the attack. They even have weapons. Look what they did to my classmate. The horse-faced, bald Dean's expression darkened instantly, his presence doubling in size. He glanced at the opposing group, then moved like lightning. In a flash, each of them had an arm ripped off. Next time you die. Cole's face was white with pain. He shot me a look filled with venom. Ha 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 ha, this is genius. How did she know an NPC like that existed? Her unconventional thinking is just chef's kiss. This is how you really use the instance's mechanics. Perfect logic and a great way to avoid a fight. A true SAT pro, putting her knowledge to use. Cole, she's not playing by the rules. Audience, she never plays by the rules. Imagine being the instance boss. So you're telling me I designed these monster NPCs just so you could tattle on people and take shortcuts? All that commotion ate up a lot of time. By the time we reached the rooftop, there were only a dozen or so minutes left until the end of the exam. The path up was safe, so smooth it felt like a trap. I inserted the key, and the old iron door swung open with a push. A boy in a white shirt stood at the edge of the roof. "Sir," he said, turning around, but the word caught in his throat. When I saw his face, it felt like I'd been punched. I froze on the spot. "So it's you. The perennial runner-up." It really was the Liam I knew. The Liam my parents had brought home in my sophomore year, saying he was the person who saved their lives. The Liam who was always a few dozen points behind me, forever number 2. The Liam who always had a gentle smile for me, and would unconditionally agree to anything I asked. Every time I asked him why he was so good to me, he would just give a faint, light smile, tap my nose and say, "I owe you." But right before I was pulled into this instance, he was standing by the cameras, watching my interview. He was the next person to be interviewed. How, in the blink of an eye, did he become the Wraith Lord of this instance, a person who had died unjustly? Compared to my shock, Liam seemed much calmer. Didn't expect to see someone I know in an instance. "Someone you know?" I frowned. "Is our relationship just someone you know?" Liam's youthful face held a hint of disdain. "And what did you mean by perennial runner-up? Who was ahead of me?" I fell silent. The others were silent, but with a hint of confusion. Spike whispered to Tank, "Hey boss, do these two know each other or something?" Tank was just as baffled and shook his head. Spike nudged me. "Ava, should we restrain him first?" I snapped out of my daze. After thinking for 2 seconds, another possibility flashed through my mind like lightning. I walked closer to the boy in white. He watched me warily, but didn't move. So I tested the waters. "Who are you waiting for, Liam?" Spike and the others were taken aback. The boy in white looked like I had stepped on his tail. "What's it to you? Are you here to laugh at me too? Let me tell you, I never did any of those sleazy things. You'll all regret this soon enough." I furrowed my brow. Time was extremely tight. After just a few words, we had to head back to the classroom. The broadcast would start warning us to be in our seats 10 minutes before the end. While I wasn't sure if the penalty was tied to the broadcast or the final bell, it was better not to risk it. This Liam was the person I knew, yet he also seemed like a complete stranger. From our brief conversation, I had a few theories, but I needed more confirmation. The remaining players were now split into 3 groups. Cole's group, who advocated for a violent victory, my small group with Tank and the others, and a third group that insisted on passing via the exam, and had stayed in the classroom the whole time. When Cole's group and ours ran back to the classroom, there were only 11 minutes left. Everyone in Cole's group had a severed arm, and was covered in blood. Our side was in better shape, though I was covered in monster slime and looked like a mess. The moment the door opened, all eyes in the classroom shot toward us. Seeing our injuries, one of the boys scoffed out loud. "Going off to die alone is one thing, but to have a bunch of idiots follow you is another." The girl sitting next to me chimed in. "I told you, just answering the test is the right way to go. This test is exactly the same as the last one. As long as we keep looping, we'll get our scores high enough to get out." The other players didn't say anything, but many of them shot us looks of disdain. 10 minutes left until the end of the exam. Raven picked up her test paper and looked at me. I gave her an almost imperceptible nod. Before we entered the classroom, Raven had told me she'd already answered part of her test and asked if that would be a problem. I told her how to handle it. The next second, the proctor teleported over. Before he could even speak, he saw Raven rip her test into a pile of scraps. Raven stated calmly, "Teacher, my answer sheet is ruined. Please give me another one." The proctor froze for a moment, then pulled a new test out of thin air and tossed it onto Raven's desk. Raven let out a long sigh of relief and gave me a grateful look. "LMAO, this is hilarious. You can't answer the test this round, so if you already started, just rip it up. Who came up with that savage move?" The proctor's face turned green. It was Ava. I saw her whispering instructions to Raven at the door. Her brain works in mysterious ways. Now that's a real high school student. 8 minutes left until the end of the exam. Suddenly, the sound of paper ripping echoed through the classroom. "Teacher, my answer sheet is ruined too." "Mine too." "Teacher, me too." A few others, however, looked on with contempt and continued to write. The proctor's teleportation ability was put to its greatest use, efficiently distributing new test papers. But with each teleport, the proctor's expression grew a shade colder. 10 seconds left until the end of the exam. The sound of ripping paper came from the back row. It was the boy who had mocked us earlier. He said frantically, "Teacher, I need a new answer sheet too." The girl at the desk next to mine looked back at him, her face a mask of betrayal. The proctor teleported over but didn't move. The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Slam. At the last second, as if he had enjoyed the boy's fear long enough, the proctor slapped a new answer sheet onto his desk. I heard the boy behind me slide out of his chair in exhaustion. A triumphant female voice came over the broadcast. "The exam has ended." The third loop began. The girl in the next seat didn't even have time to taunt me before she lost her head in a flash of terror. System notification. Player count. 10 including that girl. Another 5 people had vanished. They had all answered the test. The remaining people in the classroom, with a silent understanding, all turned to look at me. Their eyes held a new sense of awe. In the stream chat, comments flew. "I can't believe it." The answer was staring her in the face, and that girl still didn't get it. Stubborn idiots like her deserve to die early. It's so frustrating to watch. Is anyone else terrified by how smart Ava is? It's only been 2 loops, and she's already got all the key clues. She can go straight for the boss this round. This has to be the fastest clear I've ever seen. What good is a brain though? They don't have to take the test anymore. With her 0 combat skills, she's definitely going to get abandoned. The user above is hilarious. If brains are useless, why don't you have your butt on top of your neck? This time, no one stayed in the classroom. The moment the announcement to begin the exam sounded, almost everyone stood up. Cole shot us a vicious glare before dragging his injured arm out of the classroom. He was going to the security office for the key. Tank and the others looked at me, but I led them to the school's records office. Tank was an excellent fighter. He made short work of the minor monsters on the way to the records office. The records office itself was teeming with monsters, but the few of us worked together smoothly. Soon we split up to search for Liam's file. The records office was pitch black, which made the search incredibly difficult. I meticulously combed through stacks of documents and finally found the file I was looking for. Ava. In the relatives section, the word orphan stung my eyes. After reading the file, I silently put it back. I continued searching for Liam's file. This step took a very long time. By the time we found it, there were only 20 minutes left until the end of the exam. Tank let out a cheer and slapped the file into my hands. I glanced at the clock. Back to the classroom now. I started opening the file as I walked, but I noticed that the farther I got from the records office, the fainter the writing on Liam's file became. The photo was already too blurry to make out. Crap. I stopped in my tracks and scanned it as fast as I could. I finally understood. After I finished reading, I tossed the file aside. No time to explain. I just ran. The records office was on the 1st floor, the exam room on the 5th. Only 5 minutes until the first broadcast announcement. And I was already out of breath after just a few steps. Tank, who was running at the front, suddenly stopped, turned back, and scooped me onto his back. Before I could even react, He was carrying me and running at the head of the group again. I clutched my chest, feeling like my lungs were about to explode, and let out a long sigh of relief. Second floor, third floor, fourth floor. I counted the floors. 14 minutes left until the end of the exam. 4 minutes until the first broadcast. I didn't know which time the rules would follow, but at least 4 minutes should be enough to get from the fourth floor to the fifth floor exam room. My ears caught a strange noise. I gripped the fabric on Tank's shoulder, a sense of foreboding creeping into my heart. At the corner leading from the fourth to the fifth floor, Tank stopped abruptly. Above us was a tall flight of stairs leading to the fifth floor hallway. At the junction of the stairs and the hallway, Cole stood silhouetted against the light. He grinned menacingly. I told you she was the Wraith Lord, but you didn't believe me. You just had to help her. So don't blame me for what happens next. You can all die with her. He smashed a black orb in his hand onto the ground, and it instantly morphed into a giant shadow monster. Tank paused, slowly crouched down, and set me on my feet. Only 3 minutes and 28 seconds until the first broadcast. Cole ran off as the monster began to move. It didn't walk, it slid down, like a shadow pouring down the steps, terrifyingly fast. After a few clashes, the monster was too strong. Tank was thrown across the hall, slamming into a corner and sending plaster dust falling. Crackle, crackle. The old campus broadcast sparked with static. 10 minutes remaining. Please prepare to turn in your exams. My heart sank. The shadow descended the stairs. I backed away step by step, Raven at my side, her eyes watchful. Behind me, Spike suddenly yelled, "Shit!" At the bottom of the stairs, another group of shadows was swarming upwards. Only 10 minutes left until the end of the exam. We had to get back to the classroom to turn in our papers within the time limit, or we would definitely be erased by the rules. But the monsters were guarding the staircase, the only way back to the classroom. Tank's chest was covered in blood, and Spike's arm was broken. Raven was still struggling, whipping her silver lash. I made a snap decision and grabbed Tank. Back to the records office. Spike gritted his teeth through the pain. But, no time for talk, let's go. Did Ava's brain just shut down? If they fight to the death, they might have a chance of getting back to the classroom before the deadline. Going back to the records office is just sitting there waiting to die. The monsters are too strong. They're probably done for anyway. Let's bounce. Cole is a true veteran. He had a two-pronged plan. One was to send monsters to kill Ava's group, and the other was to meet up with the team that went to the rooftop to corner Liam. As someone who watched last season, I'm just smiling. The smaller monsters downstairs were easier to deal with. We raced all the way back to the records office. I had Raven block the door while I turned on a computer and started typing. What is Ava doing? Writing a complaint email? I don't get it anymore. Liam was framed for leaking the SAT. He didn't kill himself. The mastermind was... Whoa. She just glanced at the file for a few seconds and memorized everything. When did she piece all these clues together? I'm on my knees. She's a true master. I watched the last season, and her deductions are pretty much spot on. It's clear she originally wanted to confirm everything before going the puzzle-solving route, but now she's been forced into it. Click. Send. To be honest, I wasn't certain if my deductions were correct. There was too little reliable information. This world was slightly different from mine. Here, I was an orphan, and Liam was the school's top student. He was the school's great hope for valedictorian. The bulletin boards were covered with his awards. But then, because of some incident, they were all taken down, with only the faded edges remaining. He was the instance's Wraith Lord, which meant he must have been framed, and it had something to do with the SATs. He didn't take the SATs. On the answer sheet, there was only his name, no admission ticket number. The exam paper was changed this year. The most likely possibility, then, was that he stole the test. No, he was framed for stealing the test. He was waiting for someone on the rooftop. He first said "sir" before correcting himself when he saw us. This suggested he might not have committed suicide, but was murdered. The person who harmed him could get school keys, move freely without arousing suspicion, and knew the school's layout and schedule intimately. He must have trusted this person very much. Tank had said there were two ways to clear an instance: brute force to kill the Wraith Lord, or understanding their wish to let them rest in peace. To fulfill the wish of someone wrongly accused is to clear their name. I had planned to go to the rooftop in the next loop to meet him and confirm my suspicions. But circumstances were urgent, and I had run out of chances. Fortunately, a few seconds later, 2 broadcast announcements sounded one after another. Congratulations to players Ava, Tank, Spike, and Raven for resolving the lingering wish. Instance cleared. Reward granted. An unfinished wish. Congratulations to players Cole, Zhao Qian, Sun, and Li for killing the boss. Instance cleared. Reward granted. 10 copies of 5 years of SATs, 3 years of practice tests. After the broadcast, we were teleported back to the classroom. Cole and his group were cursing the system's rewards. Liam was so weak. First time seeing such a pathetic boss. The reward is useless too. The animosity was palpable. Tank wanted to rush over and beat him up, but he was too badly injured. Cole stared at us with hatred and sneered. Can this system reward be taken from others? After a moment of silence, the broadcast crackled. It can be given voluntarily, but not taken by force. Cole spat on the ground. You got lucky. I frowned. The system notification. Why was it a broadcast? Previous notifications had always been directly in my mind. Something clicked. In the last second before the instance dissipated, Tank, Spike, and Raven looked at me, their eyes full of reluctance to say goodbye. It felt like a perfect end to our brief time together. I held out my hand and made a chopping motion. The 3 of them paused. The next second, the instance dissolved. The broadcast voice faded in and out. We hope all players enjoyed the game. We'll see you next time. When I opened my eyes again, I was staring at my bedroom ceiling. The sun was just rising. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, dancing on the ceiling. This was my first day back in reality. Clink. As I reached out, something by my pillow fell to the floor. I picked it up. It was the complete chain of evidence proving Liam was framed for leaking the exam, along with various photos. Liam was framed for stealing the test. He tried to reason with the principal, only to discover the principal was the mastermind who then pushed him off the school building. It was mostly as I had guessed. I had deliberately left some uncertain key details vague in the email I sent, but it seemed the system's judgment was quite lenient. I looked up, taking in the familiar yet strange bedroom. It was my style, but much gloomier. The walls were covered in dark, intense paintings, overwhelmingly dominated by black shadows. Ava, are you awake? Someone knocked on the door. I opened it to a completely unfamiliar face. Uncle, I said. I held the documents in my hand, silent. A few days later, I laid out the more complete materials I had gathered on Liam's case on my desk. I went through everything, understanding every detail, striving for the truth. Then, on social media, I typed the first line. The truth behind the Liam exam leak suicide case. It was a long, detailed article, complete with pictures. After a few hours of silence, it shot to the top of the trending topics. The media quickly followed up. Under public pressure, the police soon reopened the investigation. In a matter of days, the case became a citywide scandal, and the truth came out. Everyone involved was indicted and sentenced. Liam, who had been wrongly accused, was finally proven innocent. Though this proof came a little late. Liam's gravestone was surrounded by people who had come to pay their respects, almost buried in a sea of flowers. People came and went. I stood quietly in the distance until night fell. The cemetery was particularly desolate at night. I walked slowly to Liam's grave, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. In the photo on the headstone, he was still wearing a white shirt, his face one I knew so well. I stood there holding the flowers, tears falling. The air around me shimmered with a tiny, imperceptible ripple. I sniffled, sat down next to the gravestone, held the flowers with one hand, and pulled 2 cans of beer out of a plastic bag with the other. Come on out. I've cleared the level, haven't I? A moment of silence. A figure emerged from the shadows and walked toward me. It was Liam. He didn't look surprised at all. You figured it out? Yes. I had figured it out. This real world was fake, an illusion within the instance. Anyone who didn't genuinely try to clear his name was complicit in his framing, and they would die here. That's why the instance was called the seventh day. Because this illusion was the final test. I sat still, looking up and handing him the flowers. Happy graduation. The boy's slender frame trembled. He took the flowers and sat down beside me. He opened a can of beer and handed it to me. He opened another for himself and held it up. I tapped my can against his. We drank in silence for a while. Liam broke the silence. Just finished the SATs? I nodded. Scores out yet? I nodded. What did you get? I thought for a moment. 712. He gave a bitter smile, then said congratulations. I took a sip of beer. It was bitter. You're not bad yourself. He turned to look at me, a question in his eyes. Summer was approaching, and the cemetery was so quiet you could hear the faint chirping of insects. The stars wheeled across the sky. It was almost dawn. This was the seventh day of my return to reality. The live stream chat had never stopped. Can someone tell me if I'm blind? Is this the same boss who personally tore apart 14 people last round? What's with the change in style? I'm more interested in what that hand gesture from Ava meant before the second to last level. It seems like she knew the instance wasn't over from the very beginning. I know. It was a secret signal for her and Tank's group, meaning action. It's a bit of a stretch, but they all seem to get it. Each of them spoke out for Liam in different ways. The others weren't so lucky though. Am I the only one who saw she got a 712, which states valedictorian? Is this a reincarnation of? That's some next level intelligence. Just after midnight, everyone was instantly teleported back to the classroom. Tank and the others showed a flicker of surprise but quickly understood the situation and nodded at me. I felt relieved. The others were not so calm. Weren't we back in reality? Didn't we clear the instance? I was right at my front door. How did I end up back here? A girl with glasses clutched her head in agony. Help me, I don't want to go through this again. It was fake, all of it was fake. My parents, I even had dinner with my parents. Cole, true to his veteran status, quickly began assessing the situation after a brief moment of confusion. He looked around and noticed that our group was unfazed. He demanded loudly, "Why aren't you guys panicking? Is this your doing?" His accusation immediately drew everyone's attention. Some turned their anger toward us. Yeah. How could you know it was fake the moment you came back? Did you know something all along? You deliberately didn't tell us. Their emotions were running high, and they had completely lost their reason. Do you want us all to die in this round of the instance? Yes. The four of you are so calm, something's definitely up. We were reuniting with our families in the illusion, while you were secretly clearing the level. Don't you have a conscience? Cole's eyes were bloodshot. He clenched his fists and walked toward me. Are you messing with me? You knew everything the whole time, and I was the only one being played for a fool. Did you get some kind of hidden quest? Using me as cannon fodder? I couldn't even be bothered to explain. The next second, as Cole strode forward, his head suddenly exploded. His skull burst like a firework, splattering blood across my face. Everyone fell silent. Only then did they seem to remember that there was still a terrifying proctor in the classroom. He had appeared again. The proctor was tall and slender. He held one hand up in a gun gesture, about to decide the next person's fate. The remaining few weren't idiots. Once they calmed down, they began to piece things together. They had never returned to reality. It was an illusion within the instance. And clearing Liam's name was the final challenge. It was the easiest stage, yet it was where the most people were about to die. The girl with glasses clutched her head in disbelief, tears streaming down her face. She looked around blankly, her gaze finally landing on me. Ava, you must have a way, right? Ava, save us. You're so smart, you must have a way. Ava, I'm begging you. She didn't dare move, just sat in her seat, hands clasped together, her eyes filled with desperate hope. But the proctor's finger was slowly pointing at her. Bang, bang. At the loud noise, the girl with the glasses flinched violently. The door had been kicked open. Standing there, in a white shirt, was Liam. Let's not be so messy. He strolled in, his tone as casual as if he were chatting with a friend. At his words, the proctor lowered his hand, his smile never wavering, and silently retreated behind Liam like a dog seeing its master. The appearance of the instance's true boss stunned everyone. Fear began to spread. But this momentary pause was quickly ignited by long-suppressed emotions. Liam's the Wraith Lord, right? Cole said he's weak. We could take him out on our own. Kill him and we clear the level. We're dead either way, let's all attack. Go. One person lunged forward, and more followed close behind. Chairs toppled, desks were overturned. The air was filled with ragged breaths and the raw desperation of their attack. Liam stood his ground, his expression completely unchanged. The attackers were frozen in place. He raised his hand, but then suddenly glanced in my direction. His gesture changed to a snap of his fingers. Snap. The proctor behind him bowed his head even lower. LOL, that was the boss just baiting them. You really think a 3S+ level boss is that easy to beat? Overconfident fools. This is weird. Last season, the boss just tore the survivors apart by hand. It was super gory and awesome. Why is he so gentle this time? This is boring. Is it just me, or can the boss not take his eyes off Ava? As the crisp snap echoed, the frozen people began to disintegrate like scattered ash, starting from their feet. Aya. What's happening? I don't want to die. He's not weak at all. He was pretending. You monster. One by one, the players who had rushed Liam turned to dust, silently swallowed by the air. The whole process took less than 5 seconds. The classroom was quiet again. Player count 4. The final exam was over. We handed in our blank answer sheets. The system notification sounded, this time in my mind. 7th day instance finalization in progress. Congratulations to players Ava, Tank, Spike, and Raven for clearing the instance. Reward granted. An unfinished wish. We hope all players enjoyed the game. We'll see you next time. The world of the instance began to dissolve. This time it was a real goodbye. Tank smiled. See you around, kid. Spike shrugged. Ava, next time we meet, I've got your back. Raven flicked him with her whip. In your dreams. The 4 of us laughed, seeing the reluctance to part in each other's eyes. Raven patted my head and pressed the silver whip that was always coiled around her arm into my hand. Ava, live well. Their figures grew more distant, their voices fainter. I yelled at the top of my lungs. Let's clear another instance together next time. Don't you dare die on me. Only silence answered me. The instance was cleared, but I hadn't returned to the real world. When I opened my eyes, I was in a pure white space. It felt like a virtual world, where even the air was unnaturally still. Liam appeared, walking on air. He still looked like a bright, young man, his eyes crinkling at the corners. So calm. Not afraid you won't be able to go back? I pointed a finger to the sky. I still have my unfinished wish reward. He paused, then lowered his eyes and smiled. Oh, so you had a plan all along. The next second he froze. Liam's pupils dilated, and his voice became urgent. Ava, are you insane? The system was still announcing. SSS grade reward an unfinished wish. Does player Ava confirm the transfer? Transfer successful. The anxiety in Liam's eyes faded, replaced by an unreadable emotion. Do you have any idea how precious that thing is? I nodded. I know. He looked at me as if truly seeing me for the first time. After a long pause, Liam said softly, you shouldn't be so good to me. I smiled. But I want to be. At that moment, the system's tone sounded. Instant space stabilizing, opening return channel for player Ava. Liam was stunned, watching as particles of archived data began to swirl around me. I waved at him. Don't get stuck in that summer. Goodbye, Lee. A flash of light, and my body was teleported away. Before I could finish my sentence, the world of the instance vanished. Only a moment had passed in the real world. The interview was over. A reporter steadied me as I stumbled, dazed. Are you okay, Ava? I looked around at the world in a daze. I was back. I'm fine. Liam was standing by the camera, looking slightly worried. Not far away, my parents were waiting, their faces full of love. I walked toward him. Liam. He patted my head, looking as bright and gentle as ever, a stark contrast to the gloomy boy from the instance. I asked eagerly, did you get your revenge in the end? He paused, then nodded. After a long moment, he handed me the sunflowers he was holding, a smile in his eyes. So it was today. I took the flowers. You didn't waste my wish. The sunflowers were in full, vibrant bloom, the perfect flower for graduation. I bounced along beside him just like I always did. You looked so cool when you made that guy's head explode. Does it suck not being a boss anymore? You can't just take out anyone who annoys you. Thank you, Liam. He looked surprised for a moment. Then his usual gentle expression returned. I should be the one thanking you, Ava. Oh well. But I'm glad. You weren't trapped in that summer. Epilogue. I am Liam. After I jumped, my resentment was so strong that I became a wraith lord. I eagerly selected those who had framed me to enter my instance, torturing them slowly. But as time went on, the torture became boring. Yet once you become a wraith lord, the system doesn't let you leave. I could only continue to exist in this warden-like position, bored out of my mind. I started creating and solving problems for fun, changing the instance over and over. Unexpectedly, my idle tinkering directly raised my instance's system level to SSS+. Every live stream brought in a huge amount of points. It was the 101st live stream. In seat number 16 sat a young girl. I looked closer. It was Ava, the person who had always outscored me, who had been number 1. But in her sophomore year, she had unexpectedly lost both her parents and become an orphan. Later, she was abused by her adoptive family. She became withdrawn and gloomy, and her grades plummeted. I hadn't had much contact with her. I thought she would be shaking with fear. But she was incredibly resilient, with an aura like a fierce flower. Completely different from the Ava I remembered. The questions I had carefully designed were like elementary school math to her. It was the first time I had seen someone like that in my instance. Others either broke down in fear, or were racked with anxiety. Even the most seasoned players would show a moment of weakness when faced with a mind-numbing test paper. But she just answered the questions with ease, accepted the loop, figured out that the test wasn't the goal, and then effortlessly deduced the rules and found the clues. It was as if the entire instance was an exam, and she was the top student, completely in control. For the first time, I thought, this is interesting. The more I watched, the deeper I was drawn in. I watched her find clues, solve puzzles, and finally enter the main event of the instance, the reality illusion. I never expected that she would genuinely try to clear my name. It was an indescribable feeling, like blood rushing back into a heart that had been frozen for a long time. 7 days later, she came to my grave. So she had figured everything out. Of course. She was so smart. How could she not? My instance was like a maze with only one path for her. I felt a strange sense of disappointment. But then, she held out sunflowers and said to me, "Happy graduation." My heart lurched. That was a blessing I had never received. It's probably just an act, I told myself. After all, getting on the good side of the Wraith Lord might save her if something goes wrong. But on some impulse, when it came time to deal with the failed players, I didn't want her to see my violent side. It's our last meeting, I rationalized. Might as well leave a good impression. Still, I couldn't resist using half of my points to buy a chance for a private conversation in a separate space at the end. I never expected it. She gave her system reward to me. An SSS plus level reward, incredibly precious. Since the creation of this instance, only 6 people had ever obtained one. An emotion I couldn't name spread through my heart. I could leave the system. It felt like a fox spirit that had cultivated for many years, finally gaining human acknowledgement, and ascending to immortality. I broke free from the system, choosing to go back to a time 2 years earlier. I successfully prevented the car accident that killed Ava's parents, allowing her to grow up with a complete family. And I was fortunate enough to become a part of her life. It turned out she was so bright, lively, and uniquely charming. It was as if all the sunlight in the world shone on her alone. I also managed to escape being framed, and those people received legal justice. Although I never again had the chance to surpass Ava in grades. I could only watch as she soared higher and higher. But just being able to watch her quietly was enough. Finally, she graduated. Her scores were, as expected, amazing. I was both proud and nervous. Until after the interview that day, when she walked toward me in a daze. Her light question was like a breeze brushing past my ear. I knew that our meeting had finally come full circle. Thank you, Ava. Thank you for clearing my name and saving me from the instance. I should be the one thanking you, Liam. Thank you for saving my parents and changing my life. The girl's doe eyes were incredibly bright, her face full of innocence. She chattered on as usual, as if the events of the instance were just a trivial interlude. But it was okay. The two timelines had merged into one, and all the sadness was left in the past. Fortunately, neither of us was trapped in that summer. The end.